Open your messages. Don't scroll. Just look at the top 5. Look at who sent the last message in each one. You already know. You didn't have to look, did you? It's you. It's you in almost all of them. And in the ones where it isn't you, it's because they finally answered something you sent 3 days ago. You are the blue bubble at the bottom of every conversation you have. And you've noticed. That's the part I want to start with. Not that it's happening, that you've noticed. You've been quietly keeping score for a long time now, and you've never said it out loud to anybody, because saying it out loud would make you sound like a person who counts, and you're not supposed to be a person who counts. But you do count. You know the ratio. So let's talk about what that actually means, not the version people tell you, the real one. Because by the end of this, I'm going to tell you what you're actually doing when you send that first message. And I'll be honest with you now so it lands properly later. It isn't kindness. It was never kindness. It's something else, and it's protecting you from something you decided about yourself a long time ago. There's also an experiment you've already run. You know the one. We'll get there. And there's one name you're thinking about right now. We'll get to that too. First, I need to describe you. And I want you to count how many of these land. You draft the casual message, the one that has to look effortless. You type it, you read it back, you take out the exclamation mark because it's too much, you put it back because now it's cold. And you sit there editing a message that says, "Hey, how've you been?" like it's a legal document. You wait a respectable amount of time before sending it, not because you're busy, because you don't want to look like someone who was waiting. You have a rule. You've never told anyone the rule, but there is a number of unanswered messages after which you stop. 2, usually. Sometimes 3, if it's someone you really love. You send the link, the meme, the song, the article they'd like. And you tell yourself it's because you thought of them, and you did think of them, but that isn't the whole reason. It's a permission slip. It's a way to make contact without having to admit that you wanted contact. You've screenshotted a conversation and sent it to someone else and asked, "Does this seem off to you, or am I being crazy?" You've watched the 3 dots appear, and stop, and appear again, and stop. And you have felt an entire weather system pass through your body over an animation. You've felt relief, actual, physical relief, when somebody texted you first. And the size of that relief embarrassed you because it was so much bigger than the event. And you've had the thought, late at night usually, the one that goes, "If I didn't message anybody for a month, how many people would notice?" How many of those landed? If it was more than 4, then you're not someone who's bad at texting. You're something else. You're the person holding it all up. Because look at what those behaviors actually have in common. Every single one of them is the behavior of somebody gathering evidence. You're not just texting people. You are running an ongoing, low-level, years-long investigation into whether you matter to them. And you have never once concluded that you do. Which brings us to the experiment, because you've already run it. You ran it months ago or years ago, and you've probably run it more than once, and you know exactly what I'm about to describe. You decided to stop. Not dramatically. You didn't announce it. You didn't block anybody or make a speech. You just decided, quietly, that you were going to stop being the one who reached out and see what happened. You told yourself it wasn't a test. That part matters. You told yourself you were just tired, just busy, just giving it some space. It was a test. You knew it was a test the entire time. Day 1 was easy. Almost good, actually. There was a little bit of freedom in it. Day 2, you checked your phone more than usual.
Day 3, you opened the app and pulled down to refresh. Twice. Because there was a small possibility that the internet was broken. Day 4, you saw one of them post something, so they were alive. They were online. They had time. Day 5, you started drafting. You didn't send it, but you wrote it out, and you kept it there, and you looked at it a few times. Day 7, you started building the explanations. They're going through something. They've got a lot on. Some people are just bad at texting. And somewhere around day 9 or 10, you stopped counting, because counting had started to hurt. And nothing happened. Nobody came. The phone stayed quiet. The world you had been holding together with both hands did not collapse. It just went on without you, smoothly, as though you had never been load-bearing at all. And that is the moment. That's the moment this entire video is about. Because in that silence you reached a conclusion, and you have been carrying that conclusion around ever since, like a stone in your coat. You decided they never really cared. Now I need you to stay with me because this next part is the part that costs something. That conclusion is wrong. Not comfortingly wrong. Not, oh, I'm sure they love you really, wrong. I'm not going to insult you like that. It is technically wrong. You made an error in the reading, and that error has cost you years. Here's what actually happened in those 10 days. You did not measure their love. You measured a system, and you were the only moving part in it. Think about what you had built. Every conversation started by you. Every plan proposed by you. Every check-in. Every, how did that thing go? Every follow-up about the interview. Every remembering of the appointment they were nervous about. You. Which means that from the other side, that friendship required nothing. It had no weight. It never asked anything of them because you had quietly removed every single opportunity for it to. And here is the brutal, mechanical truth of it. People do not miss what they never had to carry. Not because they're bad people, because they're human. Human attention moves toward friction, toward the things that ask something, and you had made yourself the one thing in their life that never asked for anything at all. So when you went quiet, it didn't register as a loss. It registered as nothing. A machine that had always run in the background, running slightly quieter. You didn't test whether they loved you. You tested whether a system that you had built, staffed, and operated entirely by yourself could keep running without its only employee. And of course it couldn't. And then you took that result, that meaningless, guaranteed, mechanically inevitable result, and you used it as proof of the thing you already believed about yourself, that you are forgettable. Now, I want to be fair with you because you've been honest with me this far. Some of them really don't care. That's true, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. In any life, there are 2 or 3 people who took what was easy to take, and who would not have noticed if you had walked into the sea. But not all of them. Not most of them. And nowhere near as many as you concluded in that silence. There's someone I want you to think about now. I'm not going to give them a name. You'll know who they are within about 2 sentences. Maybe you've watched them. Maybe you've been them. Maybe you're being them right now. They were the one who held the group together. Not the funniest one, not the loudest one. The one who knew everybody's birthday. Who noticed when someone had gone quiet. Who sent the message that said, "Hey, we haven't done anything in ages. Are we doing something?" And then booked it, and then reminded everyone, and then reminded them again. Every group has one, every single group, and nobody ever thinks about them, which is precisely the point. And then something happened to that person. It doesn't matter what. They got ill.
or they got overwhelmed, or they moved away, or they simply ran out. Because that role runs people out eventually. It always does. And they stopped organizing. And here's the part I think about. The group didn't fall apart. It would almost have been kinder if it had. If everything had collapsed, at least the collapse would have been a monument, proof that they had mattered. Instead, the group just reformed. Slightly smaller, slightly different in shape. Somebody else picked up the calendar. The photos kept appearing. Same people, same jokes. One chair moved out of frame. And they watched it happen from the outside, on their phone. And what they felt in that moment wasn't anger. It was something much quieter and much worse. They realized they had never really been in those friendships. They had been maintaining them. And there's a difference. And they had spent years mistaking the maintenance for the relationship. They had been the scaffolding. And you only ever notice scaffolding while it's still up. Now, the part underneath. Everything up to here you could file away as sad but interesting. This next part is different, and it's the actual reason you clicked on this. Because we haven't answered the real question yet. Not, why don't they text first? Not what it means about them. Why do you? And you already have an answer ready. You've used it before. It goes something like, I'm just the more thoughtful one. I value connection. I'd rather reach out than let something quietly die. That's a good answer. It's the kind of answer that sounds like a virtue. It isn't true. Here's the truth, and I want you to sit still for it. You text first because waiting is unbearable, not because you're generous. Because if you send the message, you get to stay in a world where you don't yet know the answer. Think about it carefully. If you reach out first and they reply, you get a little hit of relief. And if they don't reply, you still have a reason. You were the one who tried. They were just busy. The ball was in their court. But if you wait, if you say nothing and you let the days pile up, then you find out, definitively, whether you are somebody that people reach for on their own. And you have decided, somewhere deep and old and unexamined, that you already know that answer, and that the answer is no. So you never let the test run properly. You always intervene. You always send the message on day 4, or day 6, or day 9, right before the silence gets long enough to mean something. The first text is not an act of love. It's an act of avoidance. It's a shield you hold up against a verdict you passed on yourself a very long time ago. So where did you learn it? I don't know your particular answer, but I know the shape of it. Somewhere early on, you were in a room with people whose attention moved around, and you worked out, not consciously, you were far too young for consciously, that attention was a thing that had to be fetched, that it did not simply arrive at you the way it seemed to arrive at other people. It had to be earned, and then earned again. And the earning never actually finished. Maybe there was a parent whose mood set the weather for the whole house, and you learned to check it before you spoke. Maybe you were the easy child, the one who didn't need much, and being easy got you kept, so you got easier and easier and easier. Maybe you were on the edge of a group at school, and you noticed that if you didn't organize the thing, nobody called you about the thing. It doesn't really matter which one it was, because they all teach the same rule. If I don't reach, nothing reaches me. And a child who learns that rule becomes an adult who texts first, every time, forever, to everybody. Not because they're needy, because at some point, reaching first stopped being a choice
and started being a reflex. A way of getting to the rejection before it can get to you. And that's exactly why the advice never works.
Because at some point, somebody told you to stop texting first, or to match their energy. Or that famous one, people who want to be in your life will make the effort. And you tried it. And do you remember what it actually felt like? It felt like holding your breath. It felt like a competition you were losing in silence. It felt awful. And then eventually you cracked and sent the message anyway, and then you felt weak for cracking. That's because that advice isn't a solution. It's the same experiment with better branding. It's still a test. You're still gathering evidence. You've just changed which side of the silence you're standing on. And every one of those little rules is really just a way of saying, stop caring first, so that it hurts less when nobody cares back. Which is not wisdom. That's just an injury with good posture. So I'm not going to tell you to stop texting first. Honestly, the world needs the people who text first. Whole friendships, whole families, whole decades of people's lives are held together because somebody quietly decided, over and over again, to be the one who reaches. That is not a flaw. On its best day, it's close to the best thing about you. The problem was never the message. The problem is that every message has been carrying a question you never asked out loud. Every, "Hey, how are you?" has had a second sentence hidden underneath it. And that sentence is, "Do I still count?" And no reply on earth is big enough to answer that. That's why the relief never lasts longer than a day. You aren't asking them a question they can answer. You're asking them a question about yourself. So here's the actual shift. It's small, and it isn't satisfying, and it's the only one I've ever seen work. Text first, but stop billing them for it. Send the message because you wanted to send it, because you thought of them and it made you happy to think of them. And then let it go. Genuinely go. Instead of adding it to the invisible tab you've been running since you were a child. Because that tab is the whole problem, not the texting, the tab. And then notice what happens inside you when it goes quiet. Notice that the silence doesn't actually hurt because of them. It hurts because of what you've agreed it means about you. Silence isn't a verdict. It's just silence. Most of the time, it means their phone was in another room. There's a name you've been thinking about since about 2 minutes into this video. I told you at the start we'd get to it. You don't have to do anything about them. You don't have to send anything or stop sending anything, or have a conversation about the ratio, or perform any of the difficult adult things that people on the internet tell you to do. I just want you to notice one thing about that name. You chose them. You have been choosing them over and over for years, and you have been experiencing that choice as rejection. It isn't rejection, it's devotion. It's just devotion that you've never once given yourself any credit for because you were too busy checking whether it came back. You are not forgettable. You are just very, very easy to be around. And you have spent your whole life mistaking those two things for the same sentence. So, the last thing. The question was never who texts first. The question is what you would have to believe about yourself to be able to wait, and to not read the quiet as an answer. You already know what you'd have to believe. The only real question left is why that one has always been the hardest thing you have ever been asked to believe.